I believe everyone is in, and Beth Swedeen, you may start.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for participating in today's Survival Coalition press event, highlighting the crisis facing Wisconsin and the nation for family caregivers. As you probably know, November is National Family Caregiver Month, and Governor Tony Evers has issued a proclamation found in your press kit in recognition of the extreme contributions and sacrifices made every day by Wisconsin's family caregivers. My name's Beth Swedeen, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the Survival Coalition and director with the Wisconsin Board for People with Developmental Disabilities. I'm also a family caregiver, as are almost all the speakers and facilitators you'll hear from this morning. We're here today to put a personal face on Wisconsin's family caregiver crisis. 1 in 5 Wisconsinites are family caregivers. 80% of all care provided in the state come from family caregivers who have to be there when other supports break down. Among caregivers of adults with developmental and physical disabilities, 25% in our state are now over the age of 60. Wisconsin residents from every county and community have reduced their work hours, given up their careers, left the workforce entirely, sacrificed their retirement, spent thousands of dollars out of pocket, and have seen their physical and mental health decline. Today, we're saying that's enough. During this press event, we're debuting a new video trailer featuring stories from family caregivers across the state. We also have a panel of caregivers here, and we will share some policy recommendations that can start to provide some much needed support for family caregivers. Next on the agenda is Janet Zander with the Greater Wisconsin Agency on Aging Resources, or GWAR. She's going to give us the state of caregiving across Wisconsin. We'd urge you to put your questions in the chat, and we'll have time for questions at the end. Thanks. Go ahead, Janet.
Hello. Caregiving affects individuals of all races, lifestyles, and incomes. Family caregivers help loved ones daily with meals, bathing, dressing, medications and treatments, appointments, transportation, navigating the maze of social service programs and resources, and more. Wisconsin family caregivers provide more than 490 million unpaid hours of care each year to people with disabilities and older adults. Family caregivers often must juggle caregiving responsibilities with paid employment, childcare, and more. Their contributions are immeasurable, yet the role of this often unpaid and invisible workforce is getting increasingly challenging. Caring for a loved one, while at times rewarding and satisfying, can also take a toll on the health, social, and economic well-being of caregivers. A recent AARP report indicates 64% of caregivers report their situation as emotionally stressful. 45% have experienced a financial impact as a result of caregiving. And more caregivers than ever are indicating they are performing medical, nursing, and other complex care tasks. On top of these challenges, 60% reported difficulty in finding services and support in their communities. A shortage of direct care workers, healthcare facilities, and caregiver support services is further increasing the burden of family caregivers. 1/3 of Wisconsin counties have 5 or fewer personal care agencies. As agencies continue to close due to low Medicaid reimbursement rates and unfunded mandates, consumers, especially those in rural areas, are left with fewer and fewer options for receiving care that makes it possible for them to live at home and remain out of expensive Medicaid-funded institutional settings. A statewide survey of more than 500 people who rely on direct care services and their families found 85% did not have enough workers to cover all their shifts. Family members, many of whom are already providing the bulk of the care needed, must also now fill the care gaps created when paid workers are unavailable to provide services. According to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, informal and unpaid caregiving has been associated with elevated levels of depression and anxiety, higher use of psychoactive medication, worse self-reported physical health, compromised immune function, and increased risk of early death. Additionally, caregivers and their families often experience economic hardships through lost wages and additional medical and out-of-pocket expenses. More than half of today's caregivers are employed, yet in most states, including Wisconsin, family leave is unpaid. Many Wisconsin workers, including some of those who work part-time work in businesses with fewer than 50 employees, and those caring for relatives not covered by our state's family and medical leave program are not even eligible for unpaid leave to care for their family members. These employed caregivers risk losing their job if they need to take care of an ill or injured family member. It is especially difficult for employed caregivers, particularly low-wage workers, to take time off for caregiving. Economic losses also result when caregivers must reduce their work hours or exit the labor force, thereby foregoing income, benefits, and career opportunities to provide care. Family caregivers face economic hardship resulting from out-of-pocket spending costs, resulting from the purchase of goods and services on behalf of the persons they are caring for, including payments for medical and pharmaceutical copays, transportation, meals, personal care, durable medical supplies, home modifications, and more. The average family caregiver spends $7,000 of their own money annually providing care for family members. For those taking care of family long distance, the costs are much higher. Over the last 20 months, the COVID-19 pandemic has created additional challenges for family caregivers. The unintended consequences of social distancing, though necessary for mitigating the spread of this disease, can increase the isolation, loneliness, and adverse health consequences already experienced by many caregivers and their care recipients. Family caregivers, many of whom have already found it difficult to ask for help, now may be even more reluctant to seek outside help, even if it is available, for fear of bringing the virus into their homes. Caregivers employed in jobs where working remotely is not an option may be forced to choose between facing further economic strain and continuing to work outside the home and risking exposing their households to the virus. This may all be in addition to possibly needing to take on additional childcare, homeschooling responsibilities, et cetera, because of school closures. The time has come to support caregiver health and well-being in the same way we approach any other public health concern. We cannot simply stand by while the problem grows larger. We must preserve family caregiving as a viable and sustainable resource by taking steps now to protect families from deteriorating health effects, financial insecurity, and stress from searching for resources that may or may not even exist. Together, we can develop and enact solutions to support family caregivers and to improve their well-being and the well-being of those for whom they provide care. I will now turn this event over as we begin to start viewing our trailer video, Wisconsin's Family Caregiver Crisis, the State's Invisible Epidemic.
Caregiving is all consuming. It's 24/7 all the time. It's never turned off.
You are literally on call every minute of the day. In 10 years, I'll be 75. In 20 years, I'll be 85. I worry that the level of care I give is not sustainable.
We are not forever. We need to be training someone different in the family to come in to take care of him or supervise him.
I know it's not just us. This is happening all over the country, all over Wisconsin. We're not alone in this, and yet it feels very, very lonely.
There's nobody else to do it. I'm still working, 35 hours as a caregiver for my son because I can't get those hours covered. So if I wasn't there, there would be nobody.
Caregiving is not really given the priority or the attention that it needs. It's just really undervalued. And that's so unfortunate because it's a pretty sure bet that at some point in your life, you or a loved one will need that.
I still have children that I'm caring for, but my parents are aging and I'll be caring for them soon. When do I get the break?
The two of us are 86 years old. Mostly our life revolves around our son.
We try not to think about the future, what's going to happen with Ken. And so that's how we've survived. And then when you're trying to sleep at night, sometimes some of the other questions come up.
I am a caregiver every single hour, every minute of the day. This wasn't what I planned to do. I'm only 40 years old and I don't see an end in sight.
I'm an only child, so there isn't anyone else to provide the caregiving except me. It's not a partisan issue. It's not an area issue. It's every state, every community, every neighborhood has somebody.
Hear the cries of many like myself, because we are crying. We are here and we're crying, but we're not being heard.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lisa Pugh, and I am the co-chair of the Survival Coalition of Wisconsin Disability Organizations, and I am also a caregiver to my adult daughter with developmental disabilities. The family caregivers you will hear today in this event are from all corners of the state of Wisconsin. They all just happen to be women, but 3 in 5 caregivers are women, and a majority of care is provided by people of color. African-American women provide more hours than any other caregiver. The caregivers you will hear from some of them are taking a break from their own caregiving today in order to participate in this event. I'll be introducing them one by one, and then we will conclude with some policy recommendations. First, I'd like to introduce Michelle Rosner from Slinger. Michelle.
Thanks, Lisa. My name is Michelle Rosner, as Lisa said, and I live in Slinger with my husband and 3 of our 4 children. Our oldest moved out earlier this year when he bought a duplex. This is my caregiving story. I'm a caregiver for my 19-year-old daughter, Julia, who requires around-the-clock care. We have nursing staff in our home 10 hours a day during the week, and then my husband and I cover the rest of the hours in the weekends. We basically provide the level of care for Julia that a newborn would need, along with a lot of medical care. We get her in and out of bed, in and out of the bathtub. We help her with her bathroom needs. We physically move her to every place that she goes. She gets nearly 50 doses of medications and several respiratory treatments every day. We puree all her food and feed her through a G-tube. She has daily seizures and we do deep suctioning. So we really need to keep her in our line of sight at all times to keep her safe and alive. My husband and I are true partners in caring for Julia while also parenting our other children and meeting our work obligations. It requires both of us working together to keep our family in balance. We're constantly working out who's taking care of Julia and who's taking care of all of the other tasks. It's been challenging to keep our marriage strong. It's really hard to find time to spend together. There have been a lot of sacrifices over the years. I'm pretty confident that the fallout after Julia's month-long stay in the ICU was a big part of why I lost my corporate job of 24 years. So now I've turned to freelancing so that I can have the work flexibility that I need to take care of Julia's needs. My other kids have made a lot of sacrifices as well. Julia is at great risk for a respiratory infection. And so, as you can imagine, COVID-19 is a big risk for her. My kids know that, and they basically gave up a year of high school so that they could help protect their sister. Why do we do this? We do it because we love her. We want Julia to have a life filled with wonderful experiences in spite of her limitations. And just because she's medically fragile, we don't want to keep her locked away from the world. For us, the reward of caring for Julia is the fact that she's here and she's alive and she can spend another day with us. Thanks for listening to my story.
At this time, we'd like to hear from Christine Lidbury from Madison.
Hi, thank you. My name is Christine Lidbury, and I'm a single mom to an adult college student daughter, and I work full time. We live in Madison, and this is my caregiving story. I provide support for my dad, who's in his 80s. He has advanced Parkinson's disease and dementia, and he lives about an hour away. My mother had multiple sclerosis, and he cared for her. She had MS for about 50 years, and he ensured every day that she felt secure that she would live in her home as long as possible, and hopefully until the end. And he wants the same for him. My mom passed about a year ago, and now dad has gone into a steep decline. The weekend caregiver, we have excellent care during the week. The weekend caregiver quit earlier this year, and I haven't been able to find a replacement since then. And trust me, I've tried. I've taken over the weekend shift. I work Friday through Sunday. During that time, I do meal prep and feeding. We have to puree food also. Personal care, administer medication, toileting, and get him to bed and staff the overnight. And that's in addition to what I've done for years, which is take care of the home and the finances and hire and manage caregivers and coordinate all of the medical care. About a month ago, I think he might have had a small stroke, and he lost the ability to bear weight on his legs and really to participate in any of his own care. And so I had to use a Hoyer lift, and carrying a 180-pound man who doesn't want to be in a Hoyer lift in a Hoyer is not fun, and he can't communicate what he wants and needs. And so we try to keep things going as best we can, but things change week by week. And some people ask, is this too much for you? And yeah, it is, but what can you do? And I've done what I can do, which is work with my employer, who's been great, and I've reshuffled my job and my schedule. I get all my work done in 3 to 4 days a week, so I can be away and deal with all the inevitable things that come up in between, burning through my sick leave and my vacation. I'm fortunate that I have FMLA, but I really don't want to use it, in part because I have my own degenerative chronic medical condition, and the stress has been hard on that. And I'm really afraid I'll have to use it for my own health management. My worries are short-term now. It affects my work. We're basically in a holding pattern, living in kind of intense crisis. So why do I do what I do? My dad, who took early retirement to continue to care for my mom as she became profoundly disabled, said, we don't throw people away. And, I'm going to go over my time and take 2 seconds to give a picture of my dad, who was this larger than life, big voice, worked in manufacturing, big tough guy. And he saw it as a sacred duty to care as much as we can for the people we love. And now he's the person who needs that care, and I need to be the caregiver. And as he moves through his dementia and his infirmity, I want to make sure that he feels secure, that he will be taken care, the best care he can have in his home as long as possible. And I wouldn't have it any other way, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. Thank you.
Thank you to both Christine and to Michelle for sharing your stories. Our next story comes from Mary Beth Freckman from Oconomowoc. Mary Beth.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you. My name is Mary Beth Freckman, and I live in Oconomowoc. I'm single and own my own business. This is my caregiving story. I'm the caregiver for my adult daughter who has Down syndrome, and her husband, and my aging parents. My daughter Maddie is 28 and lives with her husband, who also has Down syndrome and recently lost both of his parents. I'm the closest one to them, so I'm their main support. I check in with them pretty much daily about tasks they need to do. I go over to help clean. I help them grocery shop, help them prepare meals, give them medication reminders, help them grocery shop. Maddie has had 3 brain surgeries in the last 7 years. She has a rare brain disease on top of the Down syndrome. So it's important for me to continue to support her. I recently had to move in with my aging parents. They live in Menominee Falls, which is about 45 minutes from me. They're 85 and 87 years old, and I'm the only one available to support them. Dad is now bedridden since last August after multiple falls in May of 2020. He had a traumatic brain injury and then had to have brain surgery in September. He came home a year ago at the end of October, and my mom's been the main caregiver ever since. We have a caregiver that comes once in the morning and once in the evening for less than an hour. The rest of the time I'm helping with toileting, turning, lifting, preparing meals, helping my dad eat. I can truly never sit down for more than 30 minutes. It's usually not more than 5 minutes without someone needing something from me. This has all been so difficult. We agreed to look for a nursing home for my dad because my mom's health was declining very quickly, which is not as easy as it sounds. I made countless phone calls over weeks and weeks with a series of dead ends and frustrating answers, including, nursing home after nursing home declining him because of his bariatric size. We did finally find a nursing home placement 2 weeks ago, Thursday, in Cedarburg after more than 2 months of searching. It's much further away from where we had hoped because it's about a 25-minute drive for my mom and over an hour for my oldest brother and I. I recently became a realtor 4 years ago, and I'm still building my business. I have no FMLA or other source of income. If I don't work, I don't get paid. My life is not my own right now, and I feel really guilty saying that because I would do anything to take care of my family. I can't take time to see my sons or my friends or my clients. I have to be concerned about COVID and not getting anybody infected. I've spent these last 4 years building my business, and now it's on hold. There is no way to plan for the future right now. What would help? If I had more money to support myself through this intense caregiving time, so I would not have to financially worry about caregiving. My personal finances are a constant worry. And if I just didn't have that stress, I would be able to give all of myself without that constant fear and stress of my finances, and just be able to be more present with my parents and my daughter and son-in-law. So this is my story. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Appreciate you sharing your story. Now we'll hear from Denise Roman, who's from Wapaka. Denise.
Denise, you're on mute.
I am so sorry. Thank you, Lisa. My name is Denise Roman, and I am a caregiver coordinator for Wapaka County, as well as a caregiver myself. This is my caregiver story. I am right now caring for my mother. Before that, I cared for my husband, who was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and for my father, who both passed away in 2016. My husband's care was really hands-on. I did a lot of palliative care with him. I changed and flush lines for him. I managed all of his medication. I took him to his chemo appointments. I took him to multiple doctor appointments. And throughout his illness, he ended up in the hospital for weeks at a time. All that time, I managed our house as well as worked full time. Towards the end, I did take family medical leave from my job of over 13 years. We started hospice the last 6 months of my husband's life, which I found out hospice was more for me than it was for my husband, as I gained support from my hospice team, which I didn't even know existed. During the time that my husband was diagnosed, we have one daughter, and she was in high school, and I lost pretty much of her high school years. I lost being involved in going to football games and being in part of plays and helping her with her curricular activities as she grew up. I lost a lot of time with her. COVID had one positive effect on my life. It enabled my daughter to come home from college from out of state and live with my mother and I for over a year. And that truly was a blessing to have both of them under the same roof. My father suffered a massive stroke when he was 80 years old and passed away at 90. During that time, I drove over an hour every weekend to help my mom with respite care on the weekends. I bathed him, I got him ready for bed, and I provide companionship for him so my mom had some time to decompress, as she was his sole caretaker during that 10 years of time. Now I'm living with my mom, who is almost 85, and caring for her. She is physically well, but cannot live in her home alone. I wish my mom had more opportunities within our rural community to support her. It's folks like her that need that extra care and that extra financial support to be able to maintain their homes and stay in them. And funding would help make her life a lot easier and allow her to stay in her home and not end up in a nursing home. I have been caring for over 15 years for my husband, for my mother, for my father, for my aunt, and I don't know what the future brings for me. When death occurs, for me, there was a sense of relief, no longer having to do those technical hard things of caretaking and watching your family member suffer, but also there is a sense of grief and guilt. I have to plan for the future, and I don't know what that's going to be like. My husband passed fairly quickly after 2 years. My father lingered for over 10 years. Will my mom be here in a year, or will she be here in 10 or 15 years? What will my future be after that? I have siblings. However, we do not have the same expectations and responsibilities when it comes to caregiving. That is called a fracture in my family, which has been another difficult thing because my family was a very close family. I moved from an area where I had a career, and I uprooted and sold our house to make the changes in my life, and they have been profound. I have additional opportunities here in Wapaka, which I greatly appreciate. The impact of the decisions I have made, though, have financially affected me. The positives, making memories of spending time with the loved ones that I have cared for, and that is priceless. But it is also a thought of what about me and what's going to happen next and what might have been. That is my caregiver story.
Thank you, Denise, for sharing that. Just a reminder to media that the family caregiver statements that you're hearing today are available in your press packet, along with the statements from the video that you watched earlier today. Our final caregiver to hear from today is Dionis Ash, who is joining us from Milwaukee. Thank you, Dionis.
Good morning. Thank you, Lisa. I am a caregiver to my 19-year-old daughter who has Angelman syndrome, which entails nonverbal, non-ambulatory, seizures, incontinent. Basically, it's 24-hour supervision. She cannot be left alone. I am also a single parent who is, I'm trying to maintain a household, maintain the things that Patrice needs. But now that she's 19, things kind of changed a little. Now she's got co-payments. Now some of the supplies that she was getting, she's not getting her wipes anymore. And I really don't understand that because she's incontinent and she needs wipes. So now that is something that she's no longer getting. So things have changed dramatically for me. The older she gets, I thought maybe things would be easier, but they're not. They're getting a little more difficult. I just dealt with the schooling and busing situation with none of that, with no help with that. I have a real bad problem with my PCWs. I have 2 of them, but they're very unreliable. One, she comes when she wants. She gets on like a roller coaster ride. She's up and down with her. One is an elderly lady who now has medical issues herself, unable to find any PCWs to replace them. One reason is because the work that they do, they don't get a proper wage. And that's one of the main problems I think that really needs to be addressed is there would be more workers if they were getting paid properly. If you had an option to work at Walmart and make $15 an hour and take care of someone for $9, I mean, most of these people are getting paid $9.50, $9.75, $10. That is not a way of living. There's no way with everything in our economy going up that someone can sustain their own households. So I'm having issues with having someone to come in and help me take care of my daughter. I'm unable to work a full-time job, so I have a couple of part-time jobs. And over time, I don't know if I'll even be able to keep those because there's not even, when Dartrice gets 21, she won't be in school anymore. And most of the programs, the adult programs, they start sending people home at 3 o'clock. So Where do I fit in that spectrum? I don't know. I'm just right now taking day by day, one day at a time, hoping and praying that one day someone will make a change for the betterment of individuals like myself, because I won't be able to work and I need to maintain a household, and the funds that I would receive would not sustain me to maintain this level that I'm currently having. So it is something that I try not to think of, but it's always there. I just feel like in most cases, I'm going to be honest with you, we have been abandoned. I'm sorry I'm moving because someone came in this room and now I'm in my daughter's room and I have to make a little arrangement there. Yeah, so it's like, I just feel like people like myself, we're being abandoned. We don't have the support that we need. We're oversighted in a lot of things that have taken place with this COVID. We have been oversighted. And I'm honest, I got kind of angry about certain things, but then again, I'm like, okay, this is our society that we live in. This is how it's going to be. It doesn't seem like the elderly or individuals with disability, they're not looked upon. They're more or less like outcast. And this really needs to be discontinued. They're humans, just like me and you. And people like myself that have to do all the support, it's a wear and tear on us. I'm getting older and I myself have physical therapy. I have arthritis and I have a 176-pound daughter that I have to lift and I have to do everything for. When the workers don't come, I have to fill in. I take care of my I help with my 88-year-old mother. I have to take her to her appointments. I have to check on her. I have to take my daughter to her appointments. I have to take myself now to therapy with, so it's like a 24-hour cycle that some days is just very vicious. It's just no ending. My day starts at basically around 5:30 and it doesn't end until about midnight. So I'm not getting sleep myself. I'm tired, I'm worn. I don't have enough respite hours to go do things. There's not enough respite services available out here, facilities where if I did want a weekend to get away, I don't have that ability. So my daughter, whatever I do, she's with me. If I go on a vacation, she's with me. And it's just, some days I just want to be able to go and just do me, and I can't. It's a wear and tear, and I see that the older I get, the more it's tearing me down, more physically worn out, mentally worn out, emotionally worn out, and no one's listening. No one is hearing me or many others that are in my same position. It's not just me. It is a lot of us out here that are going through the same thing day after day, in and out, same thing, no relief. Just, it's like nonstop. You're working 24 hours a day, literally. So if things could change, it'd be nice to get some more support, to get more funding, to pay people to come into your homes where they would be more willing to do so, to get more funding to take care of your individuals, not setting you can't get a wheelchair until 5 years. My daughter's wheelchair, she needs a replacement. I can't even get that right now. I can't afford to pay for it for the simple fact I'm not working. It's even with my medical stuff, I'm about to be without health insurance. So caregivers should have the option to get health insurance. Why can't we get health insurance? Because we're taking care of someone else that needs help. So, I'm pretty much going to be without health insurance and I need medications, I need therapy. So where does that leave me? Me just breaking down and my daughter eventually have to be institutionalized where she doesn't need to be. Because you can't trust people, and it's just not fair to her either. So there's a lot
Thank
Beth.
you, Beatrice, for sharing your story. We really appreciate it. You brought up a lot of really important issues, and I know that Tammy has some ideas. Part of our event today is talking about some policy solutions. So I want to turn it over to Tammy Jackson.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tammy Jackson. I work for Survival Coalition on public policy stuff. And I want to emphasize that we've pulled 3 very simple proposals that can help family caregivers. But I really want to say, as you've heard from all of the caregivers today, that there is just a tremendous amount of policy change needed. As Janet noted, most of these caregivers that we've talked with and interviewed, far beyond just the folks attending today's press event, are providing the majority of their care, even when they have paid workers. When you think about Christine's story of filling a weekend is 48 hours on top of a full-time job. And I really want folks to understand that when we say, paid workers are important, but families have always been providing the bulk of the care. Providing the bulk of the care. So the policy solutions that I'm going to talk about today are the tip of the iceberg, the simplest low-hanging fruit. And as you've heard from Detrice and others, there's a tremendous amount more that can be done that would be even more helpful to this invisible workforce. The first policy solution I'm going to talk about is improving family medical leave, which some of our caregivers have talked about. That's a place where the state really can improve unpaid leave options to better reflect the reality of people's lives. All family members with the capacity to help should be able to take unpaid leave without fearing that they'll lose their job. Many people have very complex lives and relationships, and we want the broadest number of relatives to be able to take unpaid leave. That will help with many Wisconsin families. Working grandparents are taking care of grandkids. Working grandchildren are taking care of their grandparents. Siblings are caring for each other. And right now, under current law, those relationships do not qualify to take family medical leave. There is a wider group of people that might be able to provide some relief that cannot do it under our current law. And I don't see a reason that we should maintain that. I also want to, we've talked about family medical leave in this group, but family medical leave doesn't cover many independent contractors, such as realtors and others. It doesn't cover small business owners, part-time employees, and workers with jobs at nonprofits and businesses with 50 or fewer employees. And as you've heard, a lot of caregivers have reduced their hours to become part-time workers in order to provide the care. There are also a lot of adults who have no family or only have extended family, which aren't included under FMLA. So these are examples of the kinds of gaps that would still exist that would provide even more support if we could close those two. The second policy proposal that I'm going to talk about is improving the ability for our aging and disability resource centers to help every call that comes into them. Frequently, family caregivers are reaching out to their local county aging and disability resource center for help. Unfortunately, many of them are calling when they're already in crisis. And there currently are not any caregiver support programs for caregivers of people under age 60. There are for people 60 and older, but as you've seen, there are an awful lot of people here who are caring for somebody who is younger, either an adult with a disability or an acute injury, or a child with a disability that are impacted. Challenges and stressors on family caregivers are serious, whether the adult they care for is 19 or 99. And ADRCs really want to be able to help everyone who calls, because we know that supporting our family caregivers helps maintain their health and extend their ability to provide care at home for the people they love for a longer period of time. The third proposal that I'm going to mention today is establishing a caregiver tax credit. Some of our caregivers have talked about the kinds of things that they do daily as part of their routine to help the people that they love, providing transportation, food and meal preparation, filling those gaps in personal care that would otherwise have to be filled by a paid worker, durable medical supplies, home modifications. These are sometimes expensive costs, but they're often covered by caregivers with their own money. And out-of-pocket expenses often leave less money for caregivers' own health-related expenses and retirement savings. So a tax credit at least acknowledges those monetary contributions that are part of caregiving that people are covering. And it helps them also helps them be able to cover the cost of caring for somebody at home. All of these solutions are easy things that our state legislature could act on and do, and they are far from the only things that need to be done, but it is a start to start helping the vast workforce of family caregivers who are really helping the state save a tremendous amount of money by keeping their loved ones in a place that they want to be at home. I'm going to introduce now Lisa Schneider from the Wisconsin Family Caregiver Alliance.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot, Tammy. You guys have heard a lot of issues and stories and policy from a number of speakers. Right now, November is National Family Caregiver Month, so it's an opportunity to create greater awareness of what's going on. Celebrated every November, National Family Caregiver Month is a time to recognize and honor family caregivers across the country. It offers an opportunity to raise awareness of caregiver issues, educate communities, and increase support for family caregivers. I'm Lisa Schneider, Executive Director of Respite Care Association of Wisconsin, and I'm also a family caregiver to my adult daughter. We also serve as co-chair of the Wisconsin Family and Caregiver Support Alliance, whose mission is to raise awareness of family and caregiver support needs and increase the availability of and access to services and supports which will help keep people across the lifespan engaged in their community as long as they desire. It is with these three hats that I speak with you today to confirm that family caregivers often risk their own health and welfare to care for their loved ones. They do so out of love, but also out of fear, as they are the last line before having to resort to placement in a nursing home or other type of group living environment in the midst of a national caregiving workforce crisis. On October 22nd, 2021, Governor Evers issued a proclamation recognizing November as Family Caregiver Month throughout the state of Wisconsin. The Wisconsin Family and Caregiver Support Alliance joins Governor Evers as a proud observer of Family Caregiver Month. Throughout November, we will be publishing a month-long series of social media posts and hosting presentations to increase awareness of family caregiver issues that they face. We urge everyone to join us in this effort by sharing any of the campaign materials we publish amongst your own networks. We also encourage you to recognize caregivers in your own family. Thank them, ask them how they're doing. Ask them how you can help. Should I bring a mop? Should I bring a meal? The holidays are coming up quickly when caregiver stress is at an all-time high. Many people like to volunteer to serve a meal on Thanksgiving or Christmas. Another option is to give the gift of time to a family caregiver you know. Thank you for joining us as we kick off November being National Family Caregiver Month. And now we're available for questions.
Thank you to everyone who stuck on with us. We know we went a little bit over time today, but as Lisa said, we are available for questions. If any member of the media has a question, please unmute yourselves and direct your question.
This is Eric Gunn.
Hello, Eric.
How are you today? The proposals to help address caregiving needs were cut from the state budget. As you have said today, these are the proposals that you're presenting today are very modest ones. What kind of feedback, if any, have you received from members of the legislature to give you some sense of whether they will get some traction there?
So this is Lisa Pugh. I'll just start. Several of the participants in the event today were also members of the Governor's Task Force on Caregiving, which was a bipartisan group. We had bipartisan legislators who contributed to some of those ideas. And you are right, some of those were included in the budget proposal. I would say that family caregiver advocates, aging groups, disability groups, and others have continued to have conversations in the legislature about these proposals, and that there is bipartisan support. I think caregiving issues don't impact just one party or the other. They are nonpartisan issues. We've certainly talked to legislators who are caring for aging parents and or have other caregiving responsibilities in their homes. So we do believe there's interest in it. I will say that aging and disability advocates are willing to advocate for wherever the solution can be found, whether that's with the legislature, with state agencies, with grant funding, and we continue to pursue funding and policy change on all fronts. And we do believe there are some champions, and that's part of the reason why we're having the event today. I'll just toss it to Janet for her perspective on the same question.
Thank you, Lisa. As Lisa said, there are champions. We need to grow that list of champions to get this across the finish line. And so we're not willing to give up. You can hear why we're not willing to give up. This issue is way too important. So we're just really focusing our energy now on just a small handful of those proposals, hoping that we can put enough energy behind those to get them across one of those finish lines. As Lisa said, we don't care which direction we have to go to get this done, but we want to see it done. So we're hoping that our more focused energy on these few proposals will help us move this along.
Anyone else with other questions for our group of caregivers? Please feel free to use and share pieces of the trailer video that you saw today. We will be, that trailer video is just a taste of a lot of much longer interviews that were done with a variety of caregivers who you didn't even meet today, just showcasing the critical nature of this issue across the state. So you will be seeing more of those interviews and that story in a much longer piece. That trailer was just a taste of that today. Eric, I see you have another question. You have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you. The trailer, are there plans to air that on television, broadcast, cable, or are you primarily relying on social media channels to spread that around?
Tammy, do you want to talk about some plans for the video and the trailer itself?
Sure, we did do that trailer as a public piece, so you should feel free to use it on within your stories or embed on your sites or social media as you see fit. We will be doing several other longer video pieces that will also be free for use for anybody who has interest in these issues, exploring topics like the impact of caregiving on people's employment and the overall workforce in Wisconsin, impact on people's caregivers' health, the cost of caregiving, and other topics that are really relevant to how we think about this policy issue in the state. I don't know if that gives you a better sense, but the message I'm trying to give is we produce this for everyone to use, and we'd love to see it go as far as possible, because these are real people having real lives, and these are their stories.
I will just add to that this video trailer that you saw today is right now going directly in the inboxes of every state legislature in the state capitol in Madison. So we thought it was important for them to see these stories if they don't happen to be watching live right now. And also I know that Lisa Schneider, as co-chair of the Wisconsin Family and Caregiver Support Alliance, is using the video across a variety of social media strategies that you'll see throughout the month of November. I'm not seeing any other hands raised or any other questions in the chat. So I think at this time, I would just like to give a final thank you to all of our caregivers for taking time out of your busy schedules and days for joining us today. We really appreciate all the care that you provide and your willingness to just openly share your stories today. And to my colleagues and advocates, thank you for helping to illustrate this important issue. You'll be hearing more from all of us throughout the month of November. Please go out and thank the caregivers in your community today. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.